Hi, this is just going to be a video going over a bit about decals and then using the same geometry to create an insert. There was a question on Facebook from one of my decal packs or insert packs, can't remember which, asking how to convert from a decal to an insert. Well, obviously the simple answer is you can't actually do that per se, because the decal is just a flat image with some very clever mapping. But what you can do is you can use the same geometry. You just sort of set up the geometry to do a decal, and then when you've done your decal you can then just play a bit with your geometry and make it an insert. And so let's take one of my panels as an example. This is one of the panels that's available in my decal pack and my plating kit ops inserts pack. If we go into edit mode and I turn off all the command calling modifiers, that's the word I was looking for. You can see that really it's just a small box. And I've used box cutter to actually knife in things which will line up nicely with these. If I turn on the wireframe overlay, you can see that it means I'm getting a nice clean cut sort of on all my geometry. I'm not getting silly sort of resolvings of strange angles and that which will upset bevels. So that's a key thing when you're doing decals, but that's I think I've already done a video on how you go about that. Now my decals, as you can see, I have a bevel for the corners. I don't know if you can see that if I zoom in that a bit more. So I have control over that, and then I've got the main final bevel there. Now that only shows up because of the other things. Depending on the decal, I might have an additional bevel here controlling the outer edge. So rather than have a bevel controlling the detail edge, basically I'll use modifiers everywhere I can, so I've got more control. It also means that if it is for an insert, it gives the user more control. If they're doing somewhat from a distance, they can dial that corner back all the way down like that, you know, if they're not too bothered about it, because it's not going to get close enough to upset. And you can alter the width of that as well. With decals, one thing I would say is more detail is better. Obviously, if that's 5 segments, that is going to look abysmal when you do it as a decal, just because, well, it's segmented, so it is going to look abysmal, you know, yuck. But if I whack that up to 17 or 19 even, you know, 25, then it's super smooth, which is what you want when you're doing decals. Then also you tend to find odd numbers work better than even. So if I do 8, you can see that you've got equal points there, but if I do 9, rounds out a bit better. But for corners, I'll always go over the top. I'll always be like 19 or something stupid like that, because again, once it's baked, it doesn't really matter, and it's only a modifier anyway, so you're not losing out. Right, so I'll just drop the wireframe off for now. I'm using hard ops, by the way, for all of these things, because if you can afford it, you've got no excuse not to buy it. So let's just turn this, say, into a decal, shall we? So to do that, I will add basically an outer for it. I like to work in orthographic mode. Perspective does tend to mess things up. So I'll go in here, I'll insert it, get it to where I want, right, and then I'll just EZ take it down, and that's that basically. Local mode. And as I say, I like to operate in modifiers, so I shall just bump. Don't want that one. And we want to get all 4 corners here. Really, seeing as there's no additional geometry, I could have just clicked one and then selected edge rings, which I've got assigned to Control Alt and click. And then now with hard ops I can just Q and Control Mark, and that would create a bevel group. But if you don't have hard ops, just go in, add a vertex group, assign those points to it, give it a reasonable name, corners. I mean, even with hard ops I'd specifically named the bevel, so go in here, add a bevel, change the limit method to vertex group and select corners, and I will call this dot corners so I know which bevel it is. That's way too much, so I'll divide that by 10, say. That looks nicer. And I know that's a reasonable figure because this is a 2 meter thing. And then we'll just slap a 5 on there because, you know, why not? Now, first things, when you are using vertex groups, you're using vertexes. Now, all of these vertexes are connected. So as far as it's concerned, at the present time, there's no difference between doing this and make it an angle. So what I do then is I would tend to add an extra loop. So I'll do a Control R down there. It's not made a difference. That's because the new loop is automatically sort of linked to near vertexes. So I just click remove on them. Do a Control R here. Click remove on that. And hey presto. Now my corners have their own one. Now to improve the flow of the actual bevel, if I turn on the wireframe, and let's crank that bevel up a tad, shall we? Now we've got them in the corners, and you can see that's ugly. What I would do, select those two, press F to make that one face, and then you can do these, or you can use symmetry. But I just tend to, I'll select those two, opposite end, press F, and there you are, you've got a much tidier bevel in your corner now. So that's my corner done. So what I'd then do is I would select the upper edge like this, and I would add a bevel to that. I used hard ops there. Now one thing I will add, if you're using hard ops and you want to rename your groups, don't do it with the modifier active. Turn off the visibility, and I'll show you why in a second. Change that to top edge. Now if you go to your modifiers, you can see vertex groups, it doesn't, if you rename it, it doesn't handle the rename, and so that would go squirrely, and I've had Blender just wig out on me and hang big style. Now another thing to bear in mind is where this is. As you can see what happened there. The order of that dictates how it behaves, and sometimes if you've set that up and then you set up the main bevel, then add the corners, it can go crazy, and all you've got to do is make sure your bevel orders are right. So again, I'd call that top edge. Then I can actually add another bevel, and you can see now I've take that to angle, make that to 60 because reasons, and just pull that down like that, and then just give that a number, and there you go, there's your multiply controlled thing. So I can change the size of my corners, I could change how many segments that corner is using, I can change the size of my upper bevel within reason. Again, ramp that up so it's really smooth. Or you could even make that, change that to a 30 angle, and you've suddenly got a chamfered top edge as opposed to that. So you've got a huge amount of conversion going on. So anyway, that's probably a little more detail than was needed for this, but there's your outer for your decal. So I would just basically select that, and then I would create a subset decal from that. So there's your decal done. You baked it. You want to turn it into a insert. That is really easy. All you do is you take your outer. This is now going to be, oh, one thing. See, this is the face orientation. You want this like that. If your face orientation is inverted, when you bake your decal, this is going to be black. So if you bake your decal and you've suddenly got black all around, that's all that's happened. Just check your face orientation. Make sure that's right. So you basically want your inner part to be the visible part rather than the outer part. Right, so just that. So having done that, you go in, let's go back to normal, and turn off all of this, and select a poly, go planar, delete those faces, select that edge, press F, and then I just automatically, because of course it's going to be on 0, that's the thing for decals, I'll just move that up a bit so that what will become the cutter is alright. Now again, this is now the wrong way round, so I can go in edit mode, select everything and shift N. It's now the right way round, and I don't actually need the top edge anymore. I can delete that. I want to keep the corners, so again I can delete that top edge, and I'll probably change that to weight, and then I can come in. What I'll do is I will select the top face and I'll make that sharp. I'll select these, go select the boundary loop, and I will make that sharp, so Control E, mark sharp. And then what I would also do, Control E, and I would set the bevel weight, and I'll just press the number 1, hit return. So there you can see now that what happens is it gives me bevel on the bottom, gives me my corners, but the top is sharp, because you don't want the top beveled, because that's just your wireframe. So you go in here, viewport visibility, make that wire, or if you've got hard ops you can just QTS and that'll flick between solid and wire. And that's it. There is your cutter for your insert. So all you would do then, select that, make sure actually one thing you want to do, make sure everything's at 0. So in that case that isn't. So I'm just going to do mark all transforms and then make sure I set the origin to the cursor. So I know it's at 0. Select the outer, parent it. It's important. You can do it in KitOps, but I prefer to do that. Now this of course assumes you have KitOps Pro, because you can't create inserts yourself if you don't have KitOps Pro. So I could just go into create insert then. For some reason it always flicks this back to solid. Just make it a cutter. Make sure it's main object. That's another gotcha that can happen if you're editing. this becomes the main object. So make sure that is. You can usually tell because then you get the cutout. So you save your insert, give it a name, save it, render the thumbnail, and that's it. You know, you've basically, and you see again it's swapped that over, so QTS, and you just go through the same process. So like here I've got literally one I'm currently working on, so I'm actually working on this at the moment. So first thing, make sure it's in the center. I use Snapping Pies. It's a free add-on, so if you search for that, I think it's by Machine Tools, worth having. Just put that at the center, and again you want your cutter to be sort of sticking above, just so that when it sits on something, you know you've got a bit of a gap. I've got the cutter coming further down because I want a bigger hole than the actual unit itself. That is the cutter for these, so check that. Again, you can see that isn't quite right, so I'm going to do Alt P, clear parent, and keep transformation, because again these were built from decals. Then I'll all transforms, and again origin to cursor just to be on the safe side. Select that, then I'll reparent it. So now I can actually build it. Now with these, with this being a cutter, maybe the user doesn't want those active, so when they've used the insert they can disable it if they want. So it only adds that detail, or they can drop that down to 3, or if they modify that they can crank it up again. It's giving the user choices. So right, I'm just going to select that and select that. In fact, I'm going to select that and I'm going to select hierarchy. Then we're going to go to GitOps. Where is it gone? Oh, there we go. Couldn't see it for looking. Right, and create an insert. So again, select that, make it the cutter, and there we go. And that is an insert. That is a cutter, but it's of a type insert, which means it's booleaning something in the actual insert itself, not booleaning what would be the master object, i.e. whatever the source stuff you're working on. Camera to insert, go into O. Then I usually go in here and just tweak it to get a better thing. Switch this. Check my thumbnail. I'm happy with that. Right. Back to GitOps. Gonna call this. So this is cvent 03b. So cvent 03b. I'm going to save me insert. And I'll just stick it in my K-pack for now, because I haven't actually started building this pack per se. Insert saved, render the thumbnail. This usually doesn't take long, and that's it. And like I say again, we just QTS to turn that out. And you basically go through and do the same process with everything else. So again, looking at this, that's not right, so Shift F4, that's right. That's actually okay at the moment. And apply all transforms. That's okay. Make sure that is parented correctly. It is. I'm just using the bracket keys there to walk through the hierarchy. I'll just give that a material. There we go. Actually, let's give that a different one. There we are. All super. And again, I would just then build the insert from that, and it's just the same thing. I think I've completed all of these. Let me have a look. Yeah, I've converted them all to geometry. If we pull up the actual inserts, where are they? Decals 21. Let's see. Just bear with me. My machine is not the quickest. Yeah, so say in a situation like this, yeah, that was, again, I'd take that, I'd delete that. Actually, in this instance, if we look here, you can see, I'll just cover this quickly. If you've created a baked geometry, then the easiest way to deal with that is you want to get rid of anything on the top. So I'd select that, select coplanar, and just Control plus on the numpad until I've got what I want. And I'm just going to GZ, move them up, and then delete the faces. Select that, face, select everything, recalculate the faces. And then I'd check things, because that's looking funky, so clear split normals, set my shade into 30, come out, QTS, and that's how I'd do that one. And basically for my vents thing, I went through and I did that process for all of the outers. If your decal doesn't have an outer, if it's a simple one, in a situation like this, for example, what I'd do, I'd basically take the outer layer and duplicate it, separate it by selection, go in here, select them, make that a face, select them, and then just go into wireframe and I just scale it slightly. And then maybe scale it on the Y. And then just EZ, face, select everything, Shift N, clear custom, set it to 30, come out, QTS, like that, and then go back in, just move those up on the Z axis a bit, and I'll probably select that, just turn that into one face, there we go. And that's the way of doing it that way. You might need to, again, when you're looking from the top, go back into orthographics so you know what you're dealing with. Scale that on the Y slightly, like that, scale it on the X. I use it separately because in situations like this you've got a bit more control. And if it's awkward, ideally if it's symmetrized, do one side and then use symmetry to move it to the other. Or if it's symmetrized all ways, then obviously do it both ways. Probably gone on longer than I expected, I usually do. But that's the whole story. Hope it was as useful for someone. I'll see you next time.